Welcome everyone to the Unboxing Careers podcast, where we shed light on what different careers are really like so that you can choose a career you will really love. Today we are diving into mechanical engineering with Brendan Englot. But before we do, let's talk briefly about unboxing thoughtful gifts. At thoughtfulcollection.com, you can shop from a wide selection of curated products you can feel good about, helping you express friendship, gratitude, and love. The next time you need to, don't just gift, give thoughtfully at thoughtfulcollection.com. Okay, I'd like to welcome to the show Brendan Englot, mechanical engineer and professor of mechanical engineering at Stevens Institute of Technology. Brendan, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to be with you today.
I'm excited about this because I know very little about mechanical engineering, but my son wants to be a marine biologist. He's all into submersibles and stuff like that. So I know you're kind of dealing with some of that stuff now. So I'm probably going to hit you up for some personal questions on that front. But let's start with this. So mechanical engineering, you can do a lot of different things with that. So if you can kind of walk us through, what is a typical mechanical engineer? What are the types of things they work on? And then your specific area of concentration.
Yeah, absolutely. Even that, it's a challenging question to answer because of how broad mechanical engineering is as a discipline. When you hear the name, you probably think of mechanisms, systems of gears or, mechanical devices, but it also goes so much more broad than that. I mean, those kind of mechanical devices may play important roles in systems that we use in manufacturing processes, but it doesn't end simply with mechanisms. It includes anything that kind of obeys the laws of physics. Anything mechanical, from fluid, liquids, gases, all different forms of material that we need to harness that play important roles in mechanical systems, whether that's an internal combustion engine or an electric car or an aircraft or a heat exchanger or an air conditioner. We want to understand how all of those things work. So really, mechanical engineering is the discipline of understanding how all of those systems work, building the modeling tools that we need to really understand them, and also be able to design them. And so, if you're excited about how all of those things work, mechanical engineering is a great discipline, and it equips you with great mathematical skills that are so broadly applicable outside of purely mechanical engineering as well. My role as a mechanical engineer involves kind of zooming out and taking more of a systems view and looking at robotics as systems and trying to understand, how they can navigate, how they can figure out where they're located, how they can make decisions about where to go next, how to control themselves and complete their tasks. So as a mechanical engineer, there's a kind of a small focused part of the spectrum I think about, especially in robotics and problems in mobile robot navigation specifically. But there's just an endless, buffet of options that a mechanical engineer can choose from depending on their interest.
So how did you fall into that concentration? Was it something like, this is going to be, I'm going to save the second. I'm famous for two-part questions, and they're really long questions. I'm going to try to split this and ask you the second one independently. But how did you fall into that concentration of working on the robotic side of things?
Yeah, a great question. And it was kind of a gradual evolution. It started with, as a kid, really having fun going on like roller coasters and theme park rides and wanting to understand how they work, how people design them. That kind of sparked my interest initially. Robotics did as well. And as I progressed through high school, I wish that we had first robotics competitions at the level that you see them today. But what we had in my high school was Science Olympiad, which I know is still popular in many high schools. And I got exposure to so many different types of mechanical engineering through Science Olympiad. Building Rube Goldberg devices, building balsa wood airplanes, just getting to see a few different angles of it through that experience. And I knew enough at that point that I knew that going into college, I really wanted to study robotics. And I felt like for me, mechanical engineering was a great point of entry to understanding and learning more about robotics.
Okay, so first of all, my son's in seventh grade. He just signed up for the Science Olympiad elective, which I'm super excited about.
Right.
So my worlds are colliding here. This is awesome. So you've been interested in this forever. You mentioned high school, and then you went into college for it. So did you said you wanted to work in robotics though, and then mechanical engineering was kind of the pathway into that. Did you have any when you were in high school? Did you have any sort of mindset to say, "Oh, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer and work on robotics," or was that I don't want to say foreign to you, but was that just not top of mind for you whatsoever?
Well, I guess it all kind of came together once I started taking physics toward the end of high school. And
Okay.
I guess, the type of physics that you see, actually, so much of what you see in high school physics, mechanics, Newton's laws, really all of that ties in and it feeds in perfectly to mechanical engineering and, covers some important topics that you continue building on if you choose to major in that in college. So, between what I was seeing in Science Olympiad, the things I was getting to build, my interest in robotics, and then kind of getting excited about the topics I saw in high school physics. That's what gave me the hunch that that was going to be an exciting path for me in college.
And then I mentioned during the intro you are a professor at Stevens Institute of Technology. So can you explain to the audience a little bit about, I would say it's a career shift, but there's obviously with every career, there are tons of different paths to take off that. I know a lot of engineers that are out there doing research projects and stuff. They all seem to be college professors, right? So is this a normal path for a lot of mechanical engineers, engineers in general? Is it something that you've always, there's a reason you got into the higher ed side of things? Can you walk us through kind of that progression, if you would?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I can tell you, it's not a path I was certain about. It was a path that just
Okay.
kind of unfolded along the way. All I really knew about going into college is that I wanted to study robotics. I thought mechanical engineering was a fun and accessible pathway for me into it because of the experiences I had in high school. And then it was just kind of something that took off from there based on the robotics topics that I got to see more of. And I guess in my case, I just felt like I had never yet seen enough. Like I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand more advanced topics. And part of it was because I ended up going in this direction of studying robotic systems and the way that you control them, and the way that they can navigate, and the way that they can deal with different kinds of uncertainty. And it took me in a direction that just kind of involved a lot of math and having to learn more advanced mathematics in order to work in that area. So, not every branch of mechanical engineering is like that. Not every application is like that. But I kind of just felt that way that as I kept going along and learning more, and going into this deeper and deeper route of specialization in robotics, I was very excited about the route I was traveling. But there was just always a little more specialized knowledge along the way that I wanted to continue learning and mastering. So it took me on this route that led to graduate school and a PhD and becoming a professor. And I guess the leap to becoming a professor was about really deciding that I was excited about research, specifically within mechanical engineering. Of course, there are many engineers that have really fulfilling and exciting careers in engineering practice as well. Being a practitioner of mechanical engineering and using it to design new products and solve new problems, um, without necessarily being a mechanical engineering researcher. So there are so many interesting pathways you can take from a foundation in mechanical engineering.
So is it a fair assumption on my side to say when you got into it and you're going through college that kind of the not the goal, but the idea was, hey, I'm going to go into private practice or work in the private sector and work for a company, and we're going to do this, we're going to build this. And as you went through, you went to the higher ed, to the education side of things because of the research side. Do you ever kind of get the one, is that a fair assumption? And then two, if so, do you ever get the inkling and be like, man, I see, like you see these companies doing something really cool and you're like, oh, I kind of wish I was involved in that. Do you ever get that kind of that wanting?
That's a great question, and the answer to some degree is yes, but also that has been satisfied a little bit by the specific path that I took in engineering research. And I guess that's the other interesting thing about engineering, and maybe proceeding to higher levels of study in engineering that go to the graduate level, um, is that it is a little more applied. Engineering involves the application of science to design new things, create new capabilities. And so industry can be involved in that process, and it often is. And sometimes you might be working on rather applied problems that might come from an industry stakeholder. So the research that I was doing, working toward my PhD, or even that I do now as a professor, it's not completely abstract blue sky research where we're just writing equations on a board. Oftentimes we have a partner that we're working with in industry that's developing a new product. They want it to have cutting edge capabilities, and they want to work with researchers to help develop those capabilities. So for me, really, the project that I started working on as a graduate student was too exciting to walk away from. And that's how I ended up not just doing a master's, but staying on for a PhD,
Okay.
was because it involved a real company that was building an underwater robot for the Navy as the intended customer. This robot was, large scale. It had probably, if you were to put a price tag on it, it would probably be close to $1 million robot. And we had the unique opportunity to work with it and deploy it at real world scale, doing inspections of Navy and Coast Guard ships and running it on ships that were as large as an aircraft carrier. So that was kind of the laboratory in which I got to do the research for my PhD. So it did kind of scratch that itch of getting to see a real world product deployed at scale and still getting to do research at the same time.
Oh, it's pretty cool. So I was going to ask you if you can kind of give a couple examples of projects you might be working on. So you mentioned you were getting your PhD with that one. Are you still involved in that? Is that kind of put to the side now? You're working on something else? Kind of, what are maybe some of the other projects, or are you still tangentially involved in? Is that an ongoing thing?
So that project has concluded, but now
Okay.
in the time since then, in my work at Stevens, some of the research that we work on here is also sometimes informed by industry stakeholders, real world problems, and companies that might already have very sophisticated products that they want you to work on, improve, or utilize in your research. So one example is in recent years, we've been working with one of our local electric power companies, and they wanted us to design a robot that could do an autonomous inspection of the indoor electric substations where very high voltage lines are coming in and then being distributed out to the grid. And sometimes if failures happen in those substations, there could be very large amounts of energy that escape. If there's like a line that has frayed insulation or something, you might have a fire or an explosion. And having a robot continually patrolling the substation, taking the key diagnostic measurements, helps improve the frequency you're taking the measurements. It also helps keep people out of harm's way. So that was that one very exciting example where we got to build this robot, have a real stakeholder, test the robot in real electric substations, and prove that this capability could really be useful.
Oh, that's really cool. The you mentioned the research side of things, which you seem to love. We were talking very briefly before this as well. You seem to love actually teaching as well. I don't want to ask you for the day to day or the week to week because you are going through, you know, doing classes and things like that. But maybe a better way to phrase this would be how much, like, what percentage of your day or your week or your month is dedicated to the research side of things versus the actual education side of things?
That's a good question. And yeah, it's life as a professor is split. Your time is divided up probably into
Yep.
more slices than it should be, really, almost to be maximally productive. But it does involve teaching. I teach 3 courses every academic year. I'm really glad one of them is an undergraduate course where I get to work with seniors who are getting ready to have their signature engineering design experience, and I get to teach the course where they design and build their senior capstone project. So that's a really
Yep.
fun course to teach. I also get to teach a robotics graduate course that I use for training graduate students at the master's and PhD level, and it includes kind of the toolkit of algorithms that you need for autonomous navigation for a mobile robot. So that takes up, maybe a third of my time. And then another third is dedicated to research and running a laboratory, overseeing and advising all the students that are working in the laboratory. And then the other one third, involves just playing a role in all of the things that help a university function. The faculty sit on different committees. We have lots of debates and discussions and do strategic planning. And so it kind of divides into those three pieces of teaching and research, and then university service and administration.
Would you change that ratio if you could to, hey, I would love to do 10% more research and take 5% away from like the admin stuff? Or do you think it's a pretty nice balance where you're at right now?
That's a good question. Because I guess I at a previous point in my career, I was in a role where it was a lot more research, right? I worked in industry as a research scientist before coming to my current role as a university professor. And it was just research and development engineering, almost 100%. But the reason I left a role like that, where I was doing 100% research, was the level of decision making, and kind of authority I got to exert over the direction of the project. So I love being able to define the different problems we work on, and take the research in any direction that I think would be interesting or impactful or exciting. So there's so much freedom, really, in the role as a professor to study the problems that you really think are the most exciting. So that motivates me. I know that I have to give up that ratio a little bit, and I can't spend 100% of my time on research, but the freedom that you get in choosing the problems that you work on makes it worth it.
I was going to ask what you like most about your job. You might have just answered that right there. Is that your favorite part of your career?
I would say maybe it's my second favorite part, and just
Okay.
second only to getting to mentor students and continually learn new things from them. I think that's really the most exciting thing. Is I feel like I'm like cheating the process of getting older by continually having bright new students come in who have new skills, new ideas, and fresh perspectives of looking at things. And I kind of get to um, borrow that perspective and learn from them, and continually stay on top of things, because I'm really looking to my students for inspiration as well as to where should be aiming our research, trying to stay on the cutting edge, trying to address impactful problems. And you need a combination of experience, which I can bring, but also creativity and energy and new ideas to make it all happen. So that's definitely my favorite part.
Excellent. And I guess being around young people keeps you young to some degree, right?
I
Young
feel
at
like that,
heart.
at least.
Eh,
Yeah, a little bit.
eh, they say when you look in the mirror, I mean, we're probably close to the same age, but I might have a couple years on you, but you look in the mirror, right? And you always see like a 20-some-year-old kid, and you're like, why are all my friends so old, right?
Yeah.
They're just there, but it's nice to be surrounded by that youth. What do you like least about your job, your career?
Hmm. Good question. Well, I guess at the end of the day, our research, it's funded by a variety of important stakeholders, and there are just a lot of obligations that go along with that. So there are a lot of rules and regulations and responsibilities that we have to be aware of. And sometimes you have to spend a lot of time thinking about those things. For every year that you're doing research that might be funded by a specific government agency, you also have to have prepare and submit reports that capture everything you do. You have to handle the budgeting and accounting associated with that project, and kind of do some work that's kind of like the equivalent of doing your taxes, for each of the projects you have that it's funded by an external grant. And so it comes with the territory, that accounting and budgeting and administrative work is necessary, but definitely not the most exciting part of the job.
You don't have a robot that could do that for you now? You ever
Yeah,
made that?
maybe we'll get there soon.
Uh, hey, Brendan, how about some common misconceptions about working as a mechanical engineer? And this can be either on the higher ed side. It could be, you said you were a research, uh, I forgot your previous role, but research scientist, right? So it could be on that side. How about some common misconceptions about your field?
Yeah, I think maybe the most common misconception about being a mechanical engineer, I mean, people think about the role of a mechanic or the role of a technician, someone who's maybe fixing a car, building a new mechanism, working physically, repairing something. Mechanical engineers can do all of those things, of course, and having that kind of experience can be helpful. But at the end of the day, it's more math than anything else. That's maybe the misconception is the most successful mechanical engineers will be the ones who really know how to harness math to model all the systems that they care about, because it's really it's a practice of understanding how things work, using math to model all of those different physical phenomena, and then taking advantage of that to design creative and efficient and impactful new things. And all of that happens through math. And so the more you're willing to kind of embrace that, the more successful and creative and impactful a mechanical engineer you can be.
So it's a really good transition because I wanted to get into some advice for high schoolers, but I guess before we kind of half segue this one, can you be a successful mechanical engineer and not be good at math? Or
Hmm.
are they coupled?
Well, we all kind of think in different ways. So there's different types of math, there's different types of quantitative reasoning. You don't have to be good at every type of math. So I wouldn't say just because there's some specific branch of it, some class you took that you're really struggling with or you're not excited about, to rule it out. Um, but the other thing is that these days we have more and more capable tools to kind of that we can harness to do the math for us. So maybe you're not excited about working out the math yourself, but you're really inclined toward computing or trying to use state of the art software tools to help you solve the problem. There's a lot of ways you can get to good solutions. So I'd say if you hate math altogether, that might be a sign that there's another career path that would be a more satisfying choice. But I wouldn't get discouraged just because there's one specific type of math that you're struggling with.
Phenomenal. All right, so let's get into a couple pieces of specific advice for high school kids. And maybe if you could offer one to each side, maybe someone that knows they want to go into engineering, could be mechanical engineering, something like that, but they would know they have the mind for it. They kind of know the path ready. And maybe for those that like you, they like robots, they like XYZ, but they don't really know that's what they want to do. Maybe a piece of advice for both of them about, hey, math might study up on math might be the answer there, but this class helped me, and I looking back 20 years, this was really good. I don't know, anything you could throw out for those people?
Yeah, good question. I guess one thing I'll note is that coming from the background I did, where I was not taking apart engines or programming computers or anything like that. I got to do some work at Science Olympiad in high school, but in general, I found the first year or so of my engineering education to be a little intimidating. The first time I sat in a class and was learning thermodynamics, I really was a little nervous. I felt like I had no frame of reference for understanding how this worked. And it just took some patience and some time, finding some colleagues that I could study with, working through a bunch of examples. It took a little patience and determination to get over the hump. And then after you've seen enough different variations of the same thing, you kind of learn the problem solving techniques that become universal throughout mechanical engineering. So I guess for anyone who either thought this was definitely the path for them and maybe hit a roadblock and is questioning it, or people who are a little unsure, it definitely takes some time and a little bit of discomfort in the beginning, because everyone's going to hit something that when they see it for the first time, they might feel a little uncomfortable, and it just takes a little time, experience, working with colleagues, going through a few examples, worked solutions, problem solving experience. And then gradually it starts to feel more comfortable.
Excellent. Got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, right?
Yeah, a little
So,
bit.
yeah,
Exactly. It's part of the process.
excellent. And then let's shift over to college a little bit as well. So, I mean, you're dealing with this, you're seeing this day in, day out, but what advice do you maybe give to your students who are studying this to be like, again, this could be, you know what? take these 3 classes, these electives, like jump in those, get those organizations, or what advice do you give to your own students about preparing for a career in this field?
Um, Really, the advice I think is most useful that I find myself giving to my students often is try to find as many opportunities as you can to kind of go outside the boundaries of just what's required of you. Because everyone's required to take a certain number of classes, and at the end of the day, a colleague of mine, a mentor of mine, likes to say, when you have your first job interviews, no one's going to ask you what was your favorite equation. They're going to ask you about what were the experiences you had that are most meaningful, that really got you excited about engineering or about certain career paths. So it's never too early to start having those kind of experiences. In college, for example, trying to spend a little time working in a research lab under the supervision of a professor, have a chance to do a summer research project. Even if you don't want to do research, maybe you just want to work in engineering practice, have an experience like that. Look for an engineering internship, join a club that looks at a specific type of engineering, or maybe pursues some competitions that could be of interest to you. Having those experiences where you actually have a really specific problem and a mission statement, you have to design something or you have to solve a specific research problem, they can really help focus everything that you've learned in your classes from something abstract to something really exciting. So the more of those experiences you have, I think it really helps inform you, so that when it comes time to look for a job or decide your career path, you have a little more clarity on what you want to do.
Excellent. And then let's assume that person goes ahead and gets that first job. So think back to your first year or two working in the professional world. Any pieces of can't talk today. Great for a podcast host. Any pieces of advice you might offer to those people in their first year or two in a professional career?
um, to not feel pressure that the very first job has to be the one that fits, that's the job you're going to have for life. Because, for most people, that's not the case. It's a journey. You might, explore a few different pathways, a few different career opportunities. And all of it is really just a continuation of your own lifelong learning experience. So even if you're not thrilled about that first job, you're learning from it, and all of that's going to inform you and help you make the next step and keep going in a direction that's the most exciting and fulfilling to you. That was certainly the case for me. And of course, if your very first job, you love it and you want to stay there for life, that's great too. But just knowing that that's not the case for most of us, and it's just a continual journey of lifelong learning.
Excellent. And Brendan, how about something you maybe wish you knew sooner about your field?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I guess over time, whenever something goes wrong, initially it's like the worst thing that ever happened to you, and then as you get older and as you have more experience, you realize this is not the worst thing. It's not the end of the world. Um, if I made an incorrect assumption, or there was a bug in my code, or something I had captured in a report was recorded incorrectly, there was a budgetary mistake, all of these things can be resolved, they can be fixed. I think the key thing I would just say is, honesty and transparency and consideration toward others. Like, all of those things are going to take you far in your career. Just making sure you stay true to your values. If you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. It's just important to kind of, adhere to your values. Show respect for other people. And you're going to get through little bumps in the road where there was a problem or a bug or a mistake, or a customer wasn't happy with something you might have delivered. It happens to everyone, and it's never going to be the end of the road. There's always going to be a next time, and you'll have a chance to learn from that experience.
Very good. I think that lesson will take you far in life, just in general, right? Just
Yeah.
outside your career as well. So perfect. Great piece of advice. Here's my two-parted question for you again. So, how about the most challenging part of most challenging part of a career in this field? Not necessarily your career, but in the field. And then on the flip side, the most rewarding part.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess first I'll answer, for me specifically as a professor, the most challenging part of my career, and then maybe I can talk more broadly about engineering in general. But I guess in my role, probably the most challenging thing is it is very competitive, because the engineering, science, and research community wants only the best work, published in top tier journals. Research grants only get awarded to the best ideas. So there is always a little bit of competition. You have to get into the mentality that it's a little bit like trying to get a hit in baseball or something. You're not going to hit a home run every time. It's just not possible. So you have to try your best with the understanding that eventually, you have enough good ideas. You write about them persuasively. You're going to get that hit eventually. So that's maybe one of the most challenging things is the uncertainty of that. Not knowing exactly which ideas you have are going to get traction, get published, get funded, and then even beyond that, it's very hard to predict which of your ideas are going to have the greatest impact. Even if you like all of them, it might be surprising down the road which ones really prove to be the most impactful or the most widely utilized by others. So that's challenging. Dealing with that uncertainty and that competitive element is challenging. Then,
So I want to follow up on that real quick if I
yeah,
could. So, right, you're talking about, I love the baseball analogy, right? We talk about this in work in marketing, so in our career too, right? We hit singles, not home runs. If you bat 300, you're a pretty good baseball player. You mentioned like your small percentage of people are getting grants, small percentage of ideas are getting, X, Y, Z. How do you know? I'm assuming if you get rejected from one grant, you're taking that same concept, that same idea, and you're applying for other grants at the same time, right? So it's not a one or done thing. At what point, I'm sure it's frustrating if you keep getting hit after hit after hit, not hit, it's a bad analogy here because we're talking about baseball. Keep getting rejected. One, two, three. At, at what point do you know, like, hey, maybe this is just a dog, right? I got to put this puppy down, or do you just keep plugging away until in perpetuity?
that's a great question. Yeah, I guess I do find it's helpful to cast a wide net, and not just at the level of me, the lab director, guiding the efforts of our whole research lab, but even at the level of each student, especially for them. The first time you write a paper, and if your research paper gets rejected, an experience many of us have, myself included, my first research paper was rejected initially. Um, being prepared for that and being ready to pivot if you need to. So I guess having a plan A, plan B, and a plan C for every researcher in the lab is kind of a good way to approach it, just because they're, the people reading your work, reviewing it, they all might have different perspectives of thinking about that problem, and they might see something you didn't see. So I think it is important to just always be prepared to pivot, to think, consider new ways of looking at the problem. So there is at least always a plan B every time we pursue research, because we know that
Okay.
research is not guaranteed to have a successful outcome. By its nature, it is a little risky. You're not guaranteed to have a positive result. So it's always good to have a backup plan so that you know what to do if you don't have that expected result. Um,
First thing you got accepted, your first paper, right? Accepted, published. What'd you do to go celebrate?
I'm trying to remember. I think I just, put my work to the side and like spent the whole weekend playing video games or something. Like
There
just
you
de-stressed and completely put my work to the side for the first time, since starting my graduate studies. So, um, yeah, and every student will get, you work hard enough and you're persistent, you'll have that first success. Everyone will get there eventually. And I think in engineering practice, it's a similar process, because you might be trying to win a particular client, or have a successful product, that you hope will gain traction and people will use it. And it could, all of these endeavors, whether you're in research or in your engineering practice, can be hit or miss sometimes, and you just have to have that mentality to be persistent, because not every not every swing gets you a home run, and you're going to connect eventually. You're going to have that success eventually. You just have to be prepared to take a few different pathways to getting there.
And then I'm sure you work with people or have worked with people in the past. Again, I'm making assumptions for you. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but someone that went into a specific concentration of engineering, they go into it, start working, and like, maybe I should have gone with B side of engineering, right? So they just kind of transition. Is that transition easier to do, or do you have to go back to school for, another year or two to kind of get, I don't know, zoned in on it, more educated, or are there professional avenues to make that transition as you're in the career field?
The great news is that there are many ways you can make that transition, and it's really never too late. And as a professor, I get to see the many unique ways that people can do that and change paths and make a pivot in their career, sometimes later than you would expect as possible. And I would say part of it is any branch of engineering. If you're majoring in STEM in some form or another, um, math is kind of the universal language that everyone speaks. So whether you major in electrical engineering, mechanical, chemical engineering, physics, what have you, you still know enough of the fundamentals to make a pivot. And if it's not, if it's too late, perhaps to make that pivot in the middle of your undergraduate studies, I've seen it done very successfully at the level of earning a specialized graduate degree in a slightly different area from your original degree. Maybe someone majors in one branch of engineering, math or science. Then they decide they want to pivot. They'll earn a master's degree in a slightly different area. And I could tell you that, for example, in our department, we have master's degrees in robotics and in mechanical engineering. We'll have students who come into that program from very different backgrounds in STEM. Some come from math or from physics or from biology, and they're looking to make a pivot into engineering, and they can do it successfully. The same might even be true at the level of a PhD. If you have a master's in a certain background and you want to earn a PhD in engineering. Usually these subjects are not distant enough that it's definitely feasible to make that change and aim yourself in a different direction. And I've even seen it at the level of professionals in engineering practice who start taking online courses to make a pivot. One
Okay.
of my most successful doctoral students originally majored in mechanical engineering, worked in some very traditional mechanical engineering disciplines, and then wanted to pivot to robotics and autonomous systems and started taking online courses, and ended up working with me as a PhD student, and really ended up going in a direction of writing software, creating algorithms, doing things that were very interdisciplinary that really came quite a long way from what he was doing as a mechanical engineer in practice. And I would say that the key is just continuing your education. And these days, the nice thing is there's so many ways you can do that, whether that's through taking applying for a master's program or just taking some online courses in an area that you're excited about.
Are there any good resources, whether they're, like, Harvard will have some classes online you can do for free and things like that. Any good engineering resources kind of similar to that you might be able to point people to?
Um, these days there is so much on YouTube, and lots of universities will just put some of their content out there. Like a good example, I spent a long time at MIT, so one that comes to mind is MIT Open Courseware, and as a result of them recording and capturing the content of so many of their courses for free, so many of the lectures are available online, and you can watch them on YouTube. So that's one of my go-to resources. And there are many others. People can also take online courses through utilities like Udacity. But there's really a lot of great resources. Even something like Khan Academy. Sometimes I want to go
Yeah,
back and revisit the fundamentals, and I continue to find that material very, very helpful.
very good. I love Khan. Try to get my kids into it. Still haven't bid yet, but we'll get there one day. So, Brendan, what did I neglect to ask you about? And we can apply this to kind of engineering as a whole if you want to, but not my field of expertise here whatsoever. I'm sure I neglected to ask you something important that you think the audience should know. So, kind of give you a la carte here to kind of pick and choose what you like.
Yeah, yeah, good question. I guess one thing that I would say is that it seems like um, there's just so many different pathways you can take to a satisfying, rewarding, and impactful career in engineering. And I get to see this because as a professor, I get this unique perspective where I get to work with new students every year. I see them graduate. I see the different career paths they go off, and many of them are very successful. I get to meet different alumni and just learn all the different ways people have become successful through science and engineering, and starting with mechanical engineering as their major. And it just seems like every single one of those paths eventually leads to you cultivating experience that gives you some unique skills and capabilities and understanding of a very specialized system that only you and a handful of other people understand. And anyone can get there by starting with an engineering education. It then just takes time, right? You learn from others, you get exposed to specialized types of systems, because the reality is, like as an engineering professor, I will never understand a nuclear power plant, the design of an automobile or an aircraft engine, as well as an engineer who's been working in practice for decades, building and testing and designing those systems. So that's really the secret ingredient, is just experience. Everyone kind of chooses their own path, and over time, through trial and error and all these different experiences you'll come to possess knowledge and skills that put you in a rarefied group. And so it's fun for me to just see the many different ways you can get there. But that's really just the secret. Is it doesn't happen overnight. Everyone just kind of cultivates that experience over time, and there's just so many opportunities for you to have a satisfying career doing that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Brendan. If you had to do a different career, what do you think you're going to choose and why?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. um hmm yeah, I mean, I think I probably would have done something in the STEM disciplines no matter what. But I guess these days I'm seeing like the tremendous impact that AI is having on everything. Computing is permeating everything. To some degree, I'm getting to work in those disciplines still, even though I sit in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. I'm also the director of our AI Institute. I get to work with these, you know, very multidisciplinary aspects of robotics. But I can't help but wonder. I guess over time I've become more and more interested in computing, and wonder if I would have different insights if I came to it from a different point of origin. So, had I
Very
majored
good.
in computer science or something like that, I know I would have a different perspective than I have now, and I'm just curious what that perspective would have been, because everyone has to start from a foundation, and that kind of informs your perspective and your thinking on things. I'm glad that it comes
Awesome.
from mechanical engineering, because I think in a way where everything's rooted in the physical world and every algorithm has some practical application I'm concerned about. But I would love to, you know, experience what it would be like if I started from a different origin and got to AI and robotics through some other route.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. You're definitely, you could tell you're wired a certain way, right? You like figuring things
Yeah.
out, and you know that's cool. So I love it. So unscripted question for me, Brendan. Got me thinking when you were talking about riding roller coasters and stuff as a kid. So the movie Short Circuit, did you love it as a kid or what?
Oh man, I haven't seen that one. I'm embarrassed not to know that. If that's something
Uh,
the essential roller
so,
coaster enthusiast should
so
have seen, I have to go home and watch it now.
not a roller coaster one; it's a robot one. But this tells me
Oh,
I'm older than you. So
okay. Okay. Yeah, that must be
it
it.
was
All right. Well, I have some
so it
homework
was
now. I have to go watch that, and I'll let you know what I think.
all right. Early '80s movie. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you think. Johnny Five was the robot's name, though.
Oh,
All right.
okay. I know that. Yeah, yeah. I just
Okay.
didn't know the
Okay. Yeah.
title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. You know what? Did you like it, or was it like? Did that trigger anything in you when you saw that?
Yeah, yeah. I do. I love sci-fi. It's just
Okay.
fun. It just kind of it inspires your thinking. Like I think it's great that people are not necessarily adhering to all the laws of physics, but just coming up with creative ideas, thinking about ways things, society, our future could be transformed in different ways depending on how technology evolves. I love sci-fi, and I just find it to be a good source of inspiration.
Awesome. Well, Brendan, thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure having you. Hey, if someone wants to reach out, ask you a question about their career, question about something you're doing, any good way for them to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can search my name. You'll find my faculty webpage. That also links to a website for my research lab. You can watch videos showing some of the latest stuff that we're working on. And anyone can always contact me by email if they want to learn more.
Excellent. We'll link that page in the show notes. So if anyone's looking, feel free to pop on down there. So Brendan Englot, everyone, professor of mechanical engineering at Stevens Institute of Technology. Hope you learned something today in today's episode. I know I certainly did. Be sure to like, rate, and review the podcast if you would. And to explore other careers or share yours with us, please visit our website to find out more. And until next time, be kind to one another.